from Matthew 2. Now, after Jesus was born in Bethlehem of Judea in the days of Herod the king, behold, wise men from the east, Magi they were called, came from the east to Jerusalem, saying, "Where is he who has been born King of the Jews? For we saw his star when it rose and have come to worship him." When Herod the king heard this, he was troubled, and all Jerusalem with him. And assembling all the chief priests and scribes of the people, he inquired of them where the Christ was to be born. And they told him, "In Bethlehem of Judea, for so it is written by the prophet." This is in Micah. "And you, O Bethlehem, in the land of Judah, are by no means least among the rulers of Judah, for from you shall come a ruler who will shepherd my people Israel." Then Herod summoned the wise men secretly and learned from them when the star had appeared. And he sent them to Bethlehem, saying, "Go and search diligently for the child, and when you have found him, bring me word that I too may come and worship him." After listening to the king, they went on their way, and behold, the star that they had seen when it rose went before them until it came to rest over the place where the child was. When they saw this star, they rejoiced exceedingly with great joy. And going into the house, they saw the child with Mary, his mother, and they fell down and worshipped him. Then, opening their treasures, they offered him gifts of gold and frankincense and myrrh. And being warned in a dream not to return to Herod, they departed to their own country by another way. Now, when they had departed, behold, an angel of the Lord appeared to Joseph in a dream and said, "Rise, take the child and his mother and flee to Egypt and remain there until I tell you, for Herod is about to search for the child to destroy him." And he got up and he took the child and his mother by night and departed to Egypt and remained there until the death of Herod. This was to fulfill what the Lord had spoken by the prophet, "Out of Egypt I called my son." Then Herod, when he saw that he had been tricked by the wise men, became furious, and he sent and killed all the male children in Bethlehem and in all that region who were 2 years old or under, according to the time that he had learned from the wise men. Then was fulfilled what was spoken by the prophet Jeremiah. A voice was heard in Ramah, weeping and loud lamentation. That means a lot of crying and sadness. Rachel weeping for her children, she refused to be comforted because they are no more. But when Herod died, behold, an angel of the Lord appeared in a dream to Joseph in Egypt, saying, "Get up, take the child and his mother, and go back to the land of Israel, for those who sought the child's life are dead." And he got up and he took the child and his mother and he went to the land of Israel. But when he heard that Archelaus was reigning over Judea in the place of his father Herod, he was afraid to go there. And being warned in a dream, he withdrew to the district of Galilee. And he went and he lived in a city called Nazareth, so that what was spoken by the prophets might be fulfilled, that he would be called a Nazarene. I think what we're seeing here is how God's Spirit is at work in this broken world to save it. God reveals, and that's sort of a theme as I was looking back over the year in all the texts that we were looking at. God is acting and God is revealing. So these learned and wealthy foreigners, these wise men, Magi, they weren't Jewish, they were Gentiles. They arrive in Jerusalem having seen a star in the sky. It must have been some sort of new phenomenon. And they were watching stars. They always, in that culture, they were a lot of, it was a spiritual culture, right? And they would read patterns in the stars, and they would gain a sense of maybe what was going on in the world, that kind of thing. And they discerned something about this particular star as connected to something that was going to happen in Jerusalem. Isn't that so interesting? They somehow connected it to the birth of a child, a king, perhaps. And you're wondering then, right, that are they reading Isaiah? Are they reading Isaiah 9? Are they reading other parts of Isaiah? And you wonder if perhaps some Jews had lived in the area where they lived at one point, and that the Jews had left one of their scrolls behind, and that these learned people were actually engaging with a library that included Isaiah. And then this star appears. We don't have the whole story. We just know that they were able to somehow put two and two together. And we see that God was revealing something to Gentile people about this coming Messiah. The general expectation at that time, I was reading this in a commentary, was that a new ruler of the Jews was coming. And you see that in the prophets, right? That there is this indication that someone is coming. And then we see Herod scrambling because he is informed that there is a new king that is going to be or has been born. And you read throughout history, like in the history books and stuff, that Herod was plagued by suspicion of other people. That's a nice way of saying that he was killing off anyone that was going to potentially take his kingdom away from him. He had been king for a long time, actually, and he did not want to lose that position. And he killed family members because of this. There were really big massacres, actually, that happened around this time as well, because he felt threatened. And so, of course, we see the playing out of this as he sends probably Roman soldiers to Bethlehem to make sure that Jesus, this little king, doesn't live. We see God at work in the appearance of this star, right? And in somehow the Magi making the connection. We see God at work revealing this Messiah. And then we recognize that God is still revealing this Messiah, and that's what we have seen and learned this year in many ways. So I want to ask you a question. It's a little bit of a reflection question for yourselves. What have you learned this year? What have you learned through Scripture or about Scripture? What have you learned about God? What have you learned about yourself? What has God shown you? How have you been challenged? How have your convictions deepened? What are the things that stick out to you? I'm going to just go through very briefly what we've explored this year, just to help our memories. I'm forgetful. I don't remember what I preach week to week most of the time, so I'm guessing you don't either. We started last year with our series called Following the Christ, Sermons from the Gospel of Mark. And so we saw story after story. We went through Mark and we saw Jesus' life, and that led us all the way to his death and his resurrection in the Gospel of Mark. After Easter, we did a Room at the Table series. And basically, we went throughout Scripture and we saw these beautiful snapshots, let's call them, of how God makes room at the table for people who are on the outside. And how God makes room at the table for the marginalized and the weak. And how God teaches us to make room at the table. We also saw that for one another and for others. And then after Room at the Table, we did Summer with the Saints, and we gained a little bit of perspective on the historic church and the idea that we're a part of a larger story. And then we did the Sermon on the Mount this fall, and that took us all the way till Advent. So we heard the teachings of Jesus in that. And then we've just spent a month in the servant songs. The early church saw Jesus in these servant songs, and now we see them as well. I think it's been a year of getting to know Jesus better. We've seen him a lot. We've heard from him a lot in many stories that we've encountered. I've been impacted by his kindness and his humility, the way that he included people on the outside. I've been impacted by his grace, that phrase, full of grace and truth. That kind of came to the surface for me as I was thinking about what I've seen in Jesus this year. We've seen him pursuing justice. We've experienced him challenging his followers to live Torah, like the ways of God in the world. We've seen him confronting unjust systems. Themes that we've seen are God's faithfulness and God's kingdom marked by justice and righteousness. We've seen that through the table imagery that has just continually come up. It's interesting. I don't plan that, but it just keeps coming up. Our exclusivity has been challenged. Our assumptions have been challenged. The other thing that has just kind of pervaded every part of this last year in the texts that we've engaged with has been this vision of a coming kingdom of God, and how we're actually part of this kingdom as his people, as the church, and how we're actually part of making this kingdom a reality on earth even now. God has been revealing who God is, part of who we are, who his son is, this Messiah, throughout the entire year. If I think back to the stories that have impacted me the most, it might be different for you. The story of the man oppressed by the legion of demons, back when we were looking at Mark, that has stuck with me. The compassion that Jesus had for that man has marked me. Hagar's story, when we were doing Room at the Table, seeing how the text honors her alongside Abraham, and how it points to another story that's kind of simultaneously going alongside Israel's story, and the fact that the text is honoring that, that has impacted how I read Scripture. The inclusion that we've seen throughout the year of outsiders and people on the margins, that has impacted me. I've become more aware of my own privilege. I think many of you could say the same thing. I've learned that loss is part of this vocation, more than I've learned in the past 3 years. I've learned that recently. And I've learned to look toward the second coming of Christ, God's kingdom coming in its fullness. So what have you learned? I put together a video for us, and I did this last year too. It's a summary of some of the things that we've learned. I couldn't fit everything in. It's about 15 minutes long. Kids, there's a lot of words in this video like that come up on the screen. So if you can't read that quickly, that's okay. You can look at the pictures if you want. You can also do something else. You can draw a picture, maybe of something that you've learned or something that you think about when you think about Jesus. You could draw a picture like that. I would love to see that after if you have one. So anyway, we have this video. For those of you who are joining us online, there's a link just on this post. It's a YouTube link that'll take you directly to the video if you want to watch it with us. For the rest of us, it's going to come up on the screen here. And then we're going to come to the table after the video. So I'm going to end this video. Thanks for joining us, everyone, here online. And I just have to do